There have been some things that have come to light over the last few days, and some of them within the last few hours. It is being reported by the BBC that Saudi Arabia has purchased on-demand nuclear weapons in response to the deal that is likely to go down between the United States and Iran. And what is being reported is that Saudi Arabia has purchased these weapons and the delivery system, but they continue to remain on Pakistani soil, but will be made readily available upon demand by Saudi Arabia to be used. In fact, it's also being reported that the delivery systems have already been placed on Saudi Arabia soil, and that the only thing necessary now to be transferred is the nuclear weapons themselves. And quoting from this article, it says, earlier this month, the Saudi intelligence chief and former ambassador to Washington, Prince Bandar, announced that the kingdom would be distancing itself more from the U.S. While investigating this, I have heard rumors on the diplomatic grapevine, this is the BBS talking, that Pakistan has recently actually delivered Shihan mobile ballistic missiles to Saudi Arabia, minus warheads. These reports, still unconfirmed, would suggest an ability to deploy nuclear weapons in the kingdom and mount them on an effective modern missile system more quickly than some analysts had previously imagined. Now, of course, these reports are unconfirmed, and when the BBS tried to get a hold of the different Pakistani and Saudi Arabian officials, they all declared that this was of unsubstantiated and baseless information, and quite frankly speculation. But the BBS does say that they, just looking at some of the facts on the ground and some of the things that Saudi Arabia is now saying, that a lot of this can be substantiated through these acts. But whether or not this is true or not, we'll have to wait and see. It would not shock me if it's the truth, but we'll have to keep it a speculation as of now. Now, as many of you know, right now, Secretary of State Kerry is in the Middle East on a 9-day tour, trying to get certain situations, and mainly the Israeli-Palestinian peace negotiations, on track. And there was an article that came out of Israel Today that the title is, "Has Kerry Come to Impose Peace on Israel?" And this is what the article says. It says, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry returned to Israel on Wednesday amid local concerns that his boss, President Barack Obama, intends to impose a peace settlement on Israel and the Palestinians that ultimately serves American interests. Now, as you know, a couple days ago I put out a report that indicated that there were rumors abounding that come the middle of 2014 that the U.S. would intervene in the Middle East peace talks and impose a peace treaty on Israel and the Palestinians. Now, frankly, I believe that this very well could be the first part of a confirmation in which the Bible talks about in Daniel 9:27. But going on with the article, it says America has switched from a third party trying to bring the two states together to a role of direct involvement in the process. Vahava Galan, head of the left-wing Meretz party, said after meeting U.S. and Palestinian officials earlier in this week. There will be a new diplomatic program based on the pre-1967 lines with agreed land swaps, Galan added matter-of-factly. In greeting Kerry upon his arrival on Wednesday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he was worried about the direction the current peace talks are taking. Now, the article goes on and says that Kerry reiterated the fact that he felt the negotiations were on target and were going well, and that in time things would go as planned. But of course he thinks things are going well. I think that he's basically looking at the future, and that is that, hey, listen, if you don't get it done, we're going to get it done for you. And one of the main sticking points, well, of course, the Palestinians will not establish that Israel is a Jewish state, but Israel also indicates that they do not want to give up any land that would hamper or compromise their security. And I think that will continue to be a problem, but I think what will happen is that a multinational, or maybe just an American or Western military will be brought in to guarantee Israel's security in areas where they feel vulnerable. Now on to a report that I just received from Stratfor that talks about the sincerity in U.S.-Iranian talks. A number of people had written into Stratfor who were doubting the sincerity of the the U.S.-Iranian negotiations, and that it was just another stall tactic so that they could become a nuclear power. And in another article by Israel Today, they indicate Iran is already a nuclear power. And I'll just give you the highlights of that article. It says recent remarks by Israeli and foreign experts all appear to confirm that Iran has already passed the point of no return in its quest for atomic weapons, despite years of solemn vows that the Islamic Republic would never be permitted to reach this stage in its nuclear program. Now, for those who believe that Israel is going to attack Iran, I have a very strong suspicion that's not going to happen. And if in fact it was going to happen, it would have already happened. They wouldn't have waited 2 weeks before, or a month, or 6 months before Iran crossed its invisible red line. And I believe wholeheartedly that the reason why they haven't attacked Iran is because they have not been permitted to do so. And you may ask, well, who's keeping them from it? Well, I believe the United States is keeping them from doing it because they are about ready to embark upon an historic an agreement with Iran, and that there's no way that they're going to allow Israel or Saudi Arabia or any of these other countries to get in the way of that. In case in point, instead of Saudi Arabia attacking Iran or what the case may be, they seem to be heading in the way of buying their way into a nuclear program. Now, of course, as I said earlier, that is unconfirmed. But all the indications are that both Israel and Saudi Arabia have come to terms that Iran will become a nuclear power, and there's really not a whole lot they can do about it. But getting back to the Stratfor report, you know, anytime I hear a lot of gossip or whatever the case may be through the different media sources, I always look to see what Stratfor has to say, because they usually will bring about a realistic truth to what the situation really is, and they explain what that truth is. And this is what they have to say. It says, several of our readers have written to us in the past week questioning our relative optimism toward this latest attempt at a U.S.-Iranian rapprochement. They, like many observers, suspect that this is yet another time-buying scheme by the Iranians to dupe the United States into giving some economic relief without making any real sacrifices when it comes to their nuclear program. The case for skepticism is understandable, but there are a number of reasons for taking this iteration of the U.S.-Iranian negotiation seriously. The foundation for this negotiation was laid more than a decade ago when the United States made the decision to topple Saddam Hussein, the most formidable Sunni adversary, on Iran's doorstep. The United States and Iran shared, and still share, an interest in battling Sunni jihadists, and here's one that you may not believe, a mutual distrust toward Russia and an economic incentive to maintain a stable crude supply. Now, if you'd have asked me what the three things that the United States and Iran share, I guarantee you one of them would not have been a mutual distrust toward Russia. I, like you, know what the Bible says, and that is Ezekiel 30 and 39, that Iran and Russia would one day come together and attack with an Islamic army, would attack Israel. But intelligence experts indicate that even though that will one day happen, they still have a mutual distrust of Russia. And in a way, it doesn't shock me that's the case, because of the fact that I know that Russia is merely using Syria and Iran to meet their own interests. So, you know, don't think for a second that they're friends. They're basically mutual allies that have come together to strengthen their own interests. But for the most part, it's to strengthen Russia's interests. And going on with the article, it says Washington was willing to absorb the risk of Iran reestablishing a foothold in Mesopotamia if that meant there was also a decent chance of the United States reestablishing a strategic relationship with Tehran in the Persian Gulf. So most of the, like I said, all of these relationships are for strategic relationships' sake. Nobody's really out to become friends. They're basically all looking at their own interests, including the United States. And I should say especially the United States. And don't think for a minute that I am not on board with that all the way. Meaning that I am on board with the United States looking out for their own interests. I mean, as much as we'd like to say that democracy is good, democracy is only good because that we excel in it. We're very good at it. But for other countries such as Egypt and Iraq and other places of that nature, and Afghanistan, that we've tried to enforce democracy and capitalism on, they really haven't fared very well. But we've been at this game for many, many, many years, and we have a very good handle on it. And truthfully speaking, it's in our best interest to push a pro-democracy type of world. And so now I'm going to skip around on this article, but basically what it's saying next is that Iran basically overextended itself in trying to control certain situations, and one being Syria. And on top of that, the United States also cut off its oil profits. And picking up with this article, it says, in the end, Iran overextended its reach and found itself on the defensive in Syria as it was experiencing real economic pain from sanctions that had cut its oil revenues in half. The nuclear program, as Stratford has maintained over the past decade, would ultimately be used as a bargaining chip in the negotiations. Now this is where Mr. Rouhani comes in. It says, with the election of Hassan Rouhani as president, Iran developed the internal political coherence to proceed with a negotiation at the same time that U.S. President Barack Obama was settling into his second term with an eye on Tehran for his foreign policy legacy. So Mr. Obama, this is something that he would love to be able to say defined his second term. Now, even though these negotiations still face a number of constraints, we believe they have, now this is Stratford talking, the potential to lead to a comprehensive settlement between Iran and the United States. Leaders in the region also appear to be taking it seriously. Politicians, religious figures, militant groups, and businessmen are reacting and in some cases adapting to what may be an inevitable U.S.-Iranian rapprochement. So basically a lot of these leaders are now trying to position themselves for what they believe is definitely going to happen, an agreement between the U.S. and Iran. So these are the facts on the ground that really most of the time tell the tale of where this is heading. And here's an example right here. It says, for example, Turkey, for example, has been making a concerted effort to organize state visits with Iraqi, Shiite, and Iranian officials, stressing that Ankara is not interested in antagonistic relationships with either Baghdad or Tehran. In practice, this means Turkey is unlikely to push hard on projects that it has pursued in defiance of Baghdad, such as an independent export pipeline for Iraq's Kurdish region, while it seems out of a compromise with its neighbors. There are also subtle signs that the United States and Iran may be negotiating by extension in Iraq and Lebanon. And even Iraq's leadership or officials are starting to cozy up to the Iraqi Sunni community to integrate more Sunnis into the political, economic, and security mainstream. And this most definitely would not have been the case if, in fact, the Iraqis did not feel that the U.S. and Iran were in the beginning stages of a possible agreement. And here's something you probably would not expect. It says it's being reported that the U.S. Embassy in London has quietly engaged in direct talks with Hezbollah over the group's inclusion in a new Lebanese cabinet. The report cited a lawmaker from the March 14 coalition, a political bloc in Lebanon that has directly competed with the Hezbollah-led March 8 coalition, as saying that U.S. ambassador to Lebanon David Hale, had communicated to Lebanese leaders that the cabinet must include Hezbollah, marking a shift from Washington's usual rejection of Hezbollah's political activities in Lebanon. Now, of course, the U.S. Embassy denied the report of direct talks, but we have received indications, this is Stratford talking, that the Shiite Amal movement in Lebanon is mediating between U.S. officials and Hezbollah. Such talks, however preliminary, would be expected if the United States were looking to settle its differences with Iran on a number of issues, including Hezbollah. And there are more clues that I could bring about that Stratford has reported, but I won't go any further than that. But this is the way it concludes. It says the players sitting between Tehran and Washington will have a better sense than most of which direction the geopolitical winds are blowing in the region. The hints trickling out of places like Iraq, Turkey, and Lebanon, as well as the much more visible angst emanating from Israel and Saudi Arabia, all point to various players in the region taking this negotiation seriously. Some will take longer to adapt, but these are the places to watch in trying to evaluate the potential for a U.S.-Iranian settlement. Now, in my opinion, this is a no-nonsense, facts-driven report that gives us a good idea of the way these negotiations are going. Now, you can draw your own conclusion to what you might believe, but the bottom line is that it looks to me that everyone is trying to get themselves ready for a U.S.-Iran agreement that could be coming as early as possibly this week. But more likely it will be ongoing, and we will see the progress in the months to come. But as I've said many times, I do not believe that this world is headed toward war. I believe we're going to see peace first, or of course the rapture of the church before that, which will be culminated in a peace agreement that will begin the tribulation period, and then sudden destruction. That to me is the most likely scenario. Now, am I saying that there could not be some type of war that could take place between now and the rapture of the church? No, I'm not saying that at all. I mean, let's face it, Israel could attack Hamas, or they could attack Hezbollah, or some little skirmish could break out, whatever the case may be. But one thing I absolutely don't believe is going to happen is that all of Israel's neighbors are going to attack them. I just can't. The boots on the ground simply don't spell that out to be the next thing on God's calendar. Now, of course, others may point to Isaiah 17. When's that going to take place? I don't foresee that taking place either. As I said before, Syria is in no condition to be attacking Israel under any circumstance, and what took place earlier in this week proves that to be the case. In fact, it wasn't so much that the United States ratted out Israel for bombing them. It was just as much a problem for Syria as it was for Israel, because what it does is that it now puts pressure upon Syria to retaliate in response. And Syria would just as soon have that kept a secret, so they would not be put on the spot to be forced to retaliate, because they're in no shape to retaliate. They know that they got their hands full with the rebels, and that they are absolutely no match for Israel and their army. So don't look for Syria to be retaliating against Israel anytime soon. But I simply do believe that Isaiah 17:1 is biblical, and that it is still yet future. And I should say this right here to most of you. I don't discount the fact that a Psalm 83 war scenario will take place. I don't discount the fact that Isaiah 19 or Isaiah 17:1 is going to take place. I just think that many of those who are trying to place these wars as on the horizon, I mean immediately, to take place almost in the next few hours, to be completely off on their calculations. Frankly, I do believe that a Psalm 83 type scenario will take place. Not a Psalm 83 war, but a Psalm 83 type scenario will take place. But I believe it's probably going to take place more in line within the tribulation period, once sudden destruction takes place. I also believe that's when Isaiah 17:1 will take place. Now, as far as Isaiah 19, that is still yet future. Morsi is not the cruel leader that everyone said he was, or should I say the one that they believe was prophesied in Isaiah 19. He's just another leader that came and went. And the danger of trying to place a prophecy in the here and now is that this prophecy is still yet future, and that this scripture has been horribly misdiagnosed. But I still look for many of these things to take place in the future, and that just at a different time frame than what others have indicated. And I just happen to believe that the facts on the ground have bared out that that's probably going to be the case. And as always, I always like to close with a word of salvation, that we don't know when we're going to die. We could die today. As I've always said, 150,000 people in this world will die today before this day is over. And all of them will die with their sins paid for. But the unfortunate part about that is that many and most will have died without receiving Jesus as a Savior. Don't let that be you. Don't be the one who says, you know what, one day I'm going to get saved and end up in a burning hell. Well, this is Terry Malone with the Calvary Prophecy Report.